zero, really. I don't have a grievance with people. I have my players back. What I have. We don't talk a whole lot about the people out here outside this building. And, you guys covered us last year. Remembered after the Tennessee game, I walked in that press conference and I said that, you guys don't get to write the story of the 2022 football team. And that wasn't a grievance with anyone outside this building. It was no one cares and works harder and is more invested in what we're doing than the people in this building. And we write the story. And right now our story isn't good enough, but we get an opportunity to finish it the right way. So, people on the outside, people pay a lot of money to come to these games, and they have the right to criticize me all they want. That's part of the job. And people can say what they want, but I'm always going to have my players' backs, love them deeply, and will always defend them. And hopefully they.
All right. Welcome back to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com on Rivals. It is Gamecock versus Gamecock week. First time in history, very historical week here in Columbia. And I titled the episode Gamecocks versus themselves, because I also feel like more than anything, it's really a week to kind of figure out what is working, what is not, and see if you can get a little bit of momentum going down this 4-game home stretch to end the season. Maybe make a bowl. We'll talk about that a little bit. That's going to be really tough to do. Even Shane Beamer admitted yesterday that you have to win 1 to win 4. So maybe it's not the best to look too far forward on it. But yeah, I started with that clip because I heard there was a really crazy rant that it apparently
in the upstate
was really into this week in the upstate. And yeah, Shane Beamer kind of danced around it a couple times through the press conference yesterday, which I thought was kind of entertaining. But if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go look up Dabo Tiger Calls or whatever. Just Google it, or Tyler from Tiger Calls. Actually, our rival site, Tiger Illustrated, did a interview with Tyler from Spartanburg yesterday, which you can find on their site. If you are subscribed to GamecockScoop.com, you can add the feature called Spy on Your Rival, and it lets you read all of Clemson's site premium stuff as well, which that is
also quite topical right now in college football. The title of that promotion,
Spy on Your Rival. Yeah. That's how
if you want to be Connor Stallions and you're subscribed to Gamecock Scoop, we do have an option for you.
Yeah, and it's only $2 a month, so
way cheaper than buying sideline passes or whatever.
I guess let's start there, since we will obviously get into the breakdown of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks and what's at stake this week and what to expect and all those sorts of things. But it's kind of a slow week. It's a G5 opponent, whatever. I'm sure a ton of people aren't looking through the depth chart of Jacksonville State right now and just foaming at the mouth at what's going on there. So let's talk a little Tyler versus Dabo for a second. What was your, take on that whole situation on Twitter? So again, if you guys missed it, Dabo basically went off on a caller on Tiger Calls, which is similar to Carolina Calls. They do it on Monday nights instead of Thursdays, but went off, and basically the caller had asked him why he makes so much money for a 4-4 start to the season or something like that, which, that's definitely a message board sort of response. I don't know. I saw a couple of people on Twitter, including some Gamecock fans, kind of justifying Dabo's response. I saw some other people saying he was kind of whiny. Did you have a take on it, I guess?
I think I use the word take loosely, is just Dabo just knows what he's doing. Like, I guess I think this is probably more calculated than people think. We talked before we started recording about a Dabo rant from back in the Spurrier days after they'd lost a few in a row to South Carolina. You saw earlier this season some of the comments about needing to lighten up the bandwagon. He knows what he's doing. He's been doing this long enough. I'm not going to go as far as saying that Tyler from Spartanburg is a Clemson staffer who was trying to get Dabo to say something, but also I think there's a good chance Dabo went in there wanting to say something like that and maybe got an opportunity and took advantage of it.
Yeah, I don't know that it had anything to do with the specific person, but if I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second, we know that they have like call screeners on those sorts of shows. I'm sure they let someone through that was going to ask a negative question, and he already had a little bit of a response ready to go. Maybe it wasn't going to be 5 minutes worth of that, but he had a lot of those stats queued up and ready to go. I do like how he tried to act like he didn't know all of it off the top of his head. Like he's not just like constantly thinking about how
he's hesitating a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like Dabo. I mean, he's fine, whatever. Like he's doing the thing, but to me, the whole shtick always came off a little as ingenuine. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. That's me growing up a South Carolina fan, and maybe whatever. But the the response itself, I thought was like, I guess justified in the sense of he's the most successful coach in Clemson history, certainly in recent Clemson history. Like you said, there's 35 years in the desert or whatever of them chasing a national championship after the 1985 one, and then they've gotten 2 in the last 7 years. All that stuff that he said is true. And so to me, he's built enough credibility to have a bad season or 2 or 3,
Yeah.
And so that's just the nature of college football right now, I think, or just anything really, is people only remember what's happened most recently. You are your last game and all that sort of stuff. At the same time, I think that's the nature of the beast, and maybe Sweeney should cry into his millions of dollars or something.
Well, there's that for sure. I definitely won't dispute that. I also think there is an element of this where it's one thing to have a bad season, which Clemson's 4-4 right now. It is another thing to, I guess, kind of the way he's gone about it, kind of some of the stubbornness. We talk about the shtick or whatever. It's a lot easier to defend Dabo if he's doing the things he should be doing. It's harder to defend a 4-4 roster when you had quite literally 0 transfer portal players come in modern college football. I think it's where the frustration comes in if you're a Clemson fan, and that I don't disagree with. I mean, Dabo could have won 10 national titles before the portal became a thing.
The hiring from within, and then that worked the first time. And honestly, that was another thing that I guess he said in the rant. He was like, I hired Tony Elliott, and he had never called a play call in his life, and then we won 2 national championships with him. It's like, okay, that worked out for you in that instance, but did you learn the wrong lesson from that? Because that still seems like that probably wasn't the right call. Now, granted, they went out and got a real offensive coordinator this offseason, so whatever. We'll see how that all plays out. But I think the thing that rubbed me the wrong way about it was just his haughtiness and like his idea that he was above reproach in some way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do agree that he's bought himself enough credibility at this point to go, he can go 4-8 and he would still be fine in my opinion. So
he's not going to get fired. There's no, he's got all the leverage of the contract. He's won national titles, plural. Like, there's nothing about that. It's more just like, at what point, and this is where also I think Clemson had to get a new AD who is pretty young by AD standards. I think he's like 40, also comes into this. He's going to have, if you want to get back to where you were, he's going to have to do some stuff this offseason. He's probably going to have to shake up the staff a little bit. He's going to have to get, I'm not even talking about go Dion and get 60 players in the portal. I don't think anybody thinks they need that. Like, it can't be 0. And that's just going to be a wait and see thing that you can't answer now, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, he's either going to have to evolve or take that $11 million and go chill somewhere or whatever. But yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. But I thought that was entertaining. And then as far as Beamer's response, he basically just said he cares about defending his players, but doesn't get his own feelings hurt. I don't know how true or not that is. Everyone kind of sees what is said about them online, especially if you're in that high-profile role. I imagine some of it probably sneaks through every now and then. But I think that was a very good measured response from.
We got the story about his son, which might have been the best moment of the year in that room, press conference wise. If you guys didn't see it, he was going to that point. He was talking about how he can handle criticism he even gets from his own family. So his son, who I think's in middle school, maybe elementary, has some kind of like Halloween parade every year. And I encourage you to go back and watch the video if you haven't. Whereas like everyone, the kids are in costume, they do like a lap around the school track or whatever. And Beamer said he went last year because Halloween was on a Monday, and that's South Carolina's off day. He wasn't told about it this year because it was on a Tuesday, and that's obviously a work day for him. And we was asking his wife why he wasn't told about his kid's Halloween parade. Apparently Hunter Beamer chimed in and said, because you're 2 and 6, need to be in the office working.
Yeah. Which we've heard that a few times now that Hunter is quite the critic, which he has the makings of a sports journalist, it sounds like to me. Yeah, so we talked a lot about this on Monday, if you want to go back and listen to that episode, but it's definitely a low point. But I don't know that we're ready to call it a breaking point at this point.
No.
And got to go back to work, and we'll see how that starts to play out this week.
I do subscribe to something else Shane Beamer said yesterday about you can't win 4 games in a row without winning 1 in a row. I know it's cliche. I know you guys don't want to hear that. I know beating Jacksonville State doesn't fix whatever's gone wrong the last 2 months. I understand that, but like all you can do is win the football game Saturday. All you can do is play well Saturday, is get healthier in practice, is do the things you have to do. And I'm not going to come on here and say that if they beat Jacksonville State, they're going to a bowl game or they're going to win the next 3, but you can't go to a bowl unless you beat Jacksonville State. That's kind of all that really matters. We're talking about this week's game, this week's show specifically, podcast-wise.
Yeah, no, it would be a good start. So I guess that's a good way to start to transition into talking specifically about this game. Last night, you wrote your first kind of preview article on it, and it had a lot to do with where South Carolina is injury-wise and some of the adjustments that are being made because of those injuries. Also because, as we talked about on Monday, you're starting to turn the page a little bit towards some of the youth on the team and setting yourself up, I guess, for next year. Can you give us a quick breakdown of where the injury report's at and I guess some of those personnel changes that we might expect to see?
Yeah, so injury-wise, pretty much the only concrete thing we got yesterday out of Shane Beamer is that Trey Jones is out. He did say Juice Wells is getting closer and closer. I don't know what that means at this point. I wouldn't expect him this week. We'll see. He said he did confirm that Case and Henry and Vershawn Lee both practice. We've heard Case and Henry's been practicing since Missouri week. I think he's really close. My only question, Case-wise, and I don't know the rule, is are you allowed to redshirt 2 years in a row? Because obviously he took a normal redshirt last year. Would they be allowed to medical redshirt him this year if he didn't play 5 games? And if that's the case, he's already played in 1. So you'd have to sit 1 more the rest of the year if you wanted to try to pursue a medical redshirt. You couldn't play it all.
Last year, he took just a regular freshman.
Yeah, he just only played in 2 games. He wasn't hurt.
You can get a medical redshirt still.
So if that's something the staff wanted to pursue, he would still have to sit out 1 more game, whether that's this week or another week. I don't know if that's something they do want to do, but I think that's worth noting. Vershawn Lee practiced this week. Shane Beamer said after A&M, he was hopeful about getting him back. And then we talked about the rest of the stuff Sunday on the Monday show with Trey Knox and Leggett.
Yeah. Any, I guess, specific ways that they're addressing some of those injuries that you've picked up on the early part of the week?
I think it just kind of goes to some of what I wrote yesterday. Just you got to get creative. And those words came out of Beamer's mouth. I asked him about it. I said, we got to get creative. Whether that's the different offensive line combinations, you're going to see a 9th different starting 5 in 5 games next week, or 9 games next week with Trey Jones out. I thought the direct snap stuff at Joyner was good. We talked about that on the Monday show, but he's good in that role. It's a change of pace from Mario and Juju. Something Joyner pointed out is that it gives him an extra blocker because obviously you don't have a quarterback and a running back on the field on a play like that. And then I think I'm interested to see where some of this I guess I didn't think of it in these terms, but Stone Blanton said those 3rd down packages are basically running a 3-3-5, which is a completely different scheme from the regular 4-2-5 Clayton White's run. You're not doing that every play, obviously, But that is, I guess I knew it, but I didn't actually process it until Stone Blanton used the term 3-3-5 yesterday in the presser. And you start kind of looking at it. You look at, Nick Barrett playing nose tackle, things like that. I don't hate it.
Yeah, I had the same reaction to him, like straight up calling it a 3-3-5, where I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is what they were doing on some of those third downs. Which, funnily enough, back when we were worried about the edge position and like talking about some of the multiple things they might have to do to cover up the edge depth, which of course they went in the portal and fixed a lot of those things after we talked about that. But we talked about one of the solutions might be to go 3-3-5 and get some of your tweeners like, well, it was Jerron Willis on Saturday, but you also had like Donovan Westmoreland and stuff like that, where you have these bigger bodied linebackers that can try to hold down the edge, but also are playing a little off the line. So yeah, interested to see if that continues to be effective. At the very least, it can create a little bit of confusion on opposing offensive lines, both from the fact that they haven't seen it on film very much from South Carolina this year, but also just in general, you're able to kind of shift up front a good bit more when you have those three guys bouncing around on that second level. So yeah, I mean, I hope that they got to try something. We talked about how they hadn't really been creating pressure all year. They only had 11 sacks going into that game last week, and then they had 3 in the first 12 plays. So obviously it caught A&M off guard. The question is, now that it's on film, can you still have that same effect on the stretch?
I think there's also an element of this too, where if you look at what part of this defense has worked the best this year overall, you'd probably say the linebackers, right? Debo Williams has probably been your most consistent player. I think you like what you've gotten out of Stone Blanton. You saw what you got out of Bam Martin Scott. You're getting more snaps out of Pup Howard. Like, the idea that you can have 3 linebackers on the field, that you can do some different things on some of those plays, get some different skill sets out there. You got Jared Willis. We've heard the word twitchy with him a couple times. He can rush the passer. Debo Williams doing that kind of sideline to sideline thing. You can try some different things. If you have 3 linebackers out there, you can try some different things, whether that's Bam, Jaron, and Stone, or Bam, Jaron, and Debo, depending on the situation. I definitely would. I don't think that's going away. Like, I don't think you put that in for A&M week. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably here to stay after you found some success with it last week.
No, I agree. And that's also those sorts of, I guess, momentum plays on defense make a bigger impact at home. I think we'll see down these last 4 games, the crowd make, like, you do that at Texas A&M, and maybe you quiet the crowd for a play or two or whatever, but it's not going to have the same momentum swing that it might have in these next 4 games. So yeah, I mean, you got to find a way to make explosive plays on defense. They still have been very much underwhelming turnovers wise. You got to create some turnovers down the stretch here too. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Normally we have the coordinator press conferences before we do the podcast, but Alan is headed to Paris. Tomorrow, right? Tomorrow.
Yeah, headed towards Atlanta today. Also, I got to interject here some men's basketball news that I hate to share, but just dropped now. Colin Murray-Boyles, a true freshman, is out indefinitely with mono. He missed the exhibition or the Garnet and Black Madness because we knew he was sick last week. That's all Lamont Paris said. That is now more than just sick. So hate that for him, and best wishes on recovery.
Man, that's too bad. And I actually just was seeing a lot of hype around him specifically yesterday. Some other outlets were talking a little bit about him, and I believe he got named to like a freshman watch list.
That hurts.
So, yeah, I've never had mono, but I had a friend in high school that had it, and they were out of commission for like 2 months. Obviously, we don't know how long he's had it and all that sort of thing. And you get to where you can be like somewhat athletic prior to that, but there's sort of lingering fatigue and stuff with mono that lasts a long time. So he probably will be able to play before too long. Will he be able to play a full game? It may take a little while before, maybe after the Christmas break or so before that, but we'll see. I'm just speculating on that. Anyway, what I was saying about the coordinators, if you want to check out GamecockScoop.com here in about an hour when the coordinators pressers start, Alan will have live updates on the Insiders Forum for that. So you're not missing anything. You'll just have to get it through a little bit of a different venue this week.
Who knows what Pete Lembo could say today? Could be anything.
Some of his... no, I'm not going to go there. Never mind. He's got some very fun World War II banter sometimes. So we'll see if there's any battle strategies. One thing you mentioned Pete Lembo, and I guess one thing we didn't talk about on Monday that Shane Beamer talked about yesterday was just some of the special teams plays that were really close. And I remember seeing in real time, I believe South Carolina they had gotten within 10.
Mm-hmm.
They had forced a punt on Texas A&M, and they're like inches away from a blocked punt.
I don't know how they didn't get it. They were in the right position. They had a couple guys there. I don't even know how it didn't happen.
Which, like Beamer said, maybe that doesn't change the result. Maybe it does, but if you somehow block that and run it back, and it turns into a 3-point game at that point, it would have been interesting. But so that goes back to the turnover point for the defense, but special teams defense, you got to make some explosive plays. Probably not against Jacksonville State. You could probably win either way there. But if you're going to win 4 straight, you're going to need.
So I don't think we brought this up at all Monday. Jalen Kilgore is your new punt returner, or at least he was last week with Amarian Brown out. I like the look. I like trying something different. I don't think that says anything particularly great about Eddie Lewis, who also didn't play a snap on offense on Saturday despite making the trip. And I think it just goes back to, again, the amount of trust the staff has in Jalen Kilgore, that you're putting a true freshman back there to catch a punt in front of 100,000 people.
Yeah, I agree. I also, we got word this morning that he made some DB.
It's the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year award. He's a semifinalist, which I believe is 12 is where they cut the watch list to for the semifinal round.
Yeah, and so I guess another bright spot along the way this season is at a position that you already thought you had 2 young stars. Now you have 3.
Yeah, I think you. I don't want to say Kilgore's the best of them, but I think you maybe feel the best of him right now. Maybe. Also, just looking at this watch list, you've got, just for the SEC players who actually made this cut, you've got Caleb Downs from Alabama, who was a 5-star. You've got Torian York from A&M, who I believe was also a 5-star, and Kilgore. And in terms of SEC players on this Freshman of the Year watch list, that's it. Just those 3.
Yeah, I think another important thing to keep in mind as we're thinking about the future, thinking about next year, assuming you hold on to the 2023 class, which of course you've lost one in Xavier McLeod in the last week or whatever. I actually think, even though it was the highest rated of the Beamer era thus far, you had 24 commitments and ended up being ranked number 17 by the Rivals rankings. That might even be underselling it. So you think about a guy like Jalen Kilgore, who, like you said, is, in this elite group of freshmen in the country. He was a 3-star in that class. Judge Collier, 3-star, has already seen some playing time as a freshman. Connor Cox, 3-star, has already seen some playing time as a freshman. Trovon Baugh, 3-star, has already seen some playing time as a freshman. So in addition to all the upside 4- and 5-star guys that you had, you're already seeing some early contributions from the bottom, even though, relatively speaking, but the bottom of that class. So yeah, holding them together, holding this 2024 class, which does have all the, headlines and stuff that you were looking for in that 2023 class with tons of 4- and 5-stars. I think you are building. I think that you're building from the ground up in a way that's going to work. It's just, can you weather the storm long enough to see it all come to fruition?
Yep, I think that goes back to what we talked about holding the ship together, about keeping things kind of in place right now. And I think that's as good a place as any to transition to a little bit of Jack State. We haven't really talked much about the actual game happening Saturday. I guess, what's your kind of initial take or first thought when you think of this game? South Carolina favored by 15.5 right now.
Yeah, that line seems about right. Beamer did open his press conference yesterday, kind of cautioning that this is the same Jacksonville State team that beat Florida State 2 years ago. Granted, a much different Florida State, probably a little different Jacksonville State. As far as what to expect, we talked a little bit on Monday. Jacksonville State is 7-2, but really their two losses haven't been very close, and they've been against the upper.
The two best teams they played.
The two best teams they played. Good way to put it. Which, even those two teams in Coastal and Liberty, you would think South Carolina would be, favored against at home. So a little bit on what to expect from them. They run like a 2-quarterback system. So Zion Webb is more of the dual threat quarterback. He's the second leading rusher for Jacksonville State, 82 carries, 460 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's got a long of 61, but he's also he will throw the ball. He's completed 62 passes for 744 yards this year, but his completion percentage is hovering around like 50%. So not the most accurate. He's got 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Some opportunities if you can get him into obvious passing situations. And then I say they have a passing specialist quarterback in Logan Smothers, but he hasn't been lights out either. I mean, he's 57.3% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's definitely the better passer of the two, but it's not like either of them are elite and super scary in the passing game. They run the ball pretty well, though. Like I said, 460 yards from the quarterback, 615 yards from their leading running back. And the throwing quarterback, Logan Smothers, also has 255 yards. So it's not like he's 0% mobile either.
Yeah, I think that's about a good way to set this up. Dangerous opponent for sure. I think you talk about this game in a lot of the same terms. We talked about the Furman game in. Jack State's probably one of the lower, just talent-wise, FBS teams. Furman's obviously a top-tier FCS team. This is Jacksonville State's first year as an FBS program. I don't know if they're up to 85 scholarships yet. But I know they obviously weren't there last year. I don't know what they added. I think the other main thing to know here is they're going to go quick. They are second in the country in like least amount of time per snap. It's going to be a Tennessee-type offense. I'm looking at their game notes now. They're averaging 20.4 seconds per play, which is the second fastest in the country. So they're going to go quick. They're going to try to do things. The only, I guess, saving grace if you're the defense in a game like that is if they sub quarterbacks, you get to sub anything you want to. It's not going to be like Tennessee where they're going to the line. If you get them into an obvious passing down, if you get into a point where they need to change quarterbacks, then you can also sub defensively and keep guys fresh, get those 3-3-5 packages back in that we talked about. And also this defense forces turnovers. We've got 11 picks this year in 9 games. You can say that's luck. You can say that South Carolina's due for those themselves. And I think Spencer Rattler's been very good pretty much all year, other than when it's late in the game, he has to push the ball and not turning the ball over. But that's something else to keep an eye on, too, is that Jacksonville State can force turnovers and make this hairy with a couple short fields if they get a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could have just much easier described it as it's a Rich Rod offense.
Yeah.
It looks like most of his offenses have forever. They're going to run fast. The quarterback's going to be mobile. It's going to spread you out to try to run the ball.
Yep, that's a good way to put it. They're going to try to do it quickly. Obviously, it's kind of, again, it's going to be a test for this front, though. I still come back to kind of what we talked about Furman week is whatever scheme or talent your opponent has, your linemen are still 30 or 48 pounds bigger in most cases. You should be able to move bodies in a game like this. But it is still a test. Jacksonville State's offensive line's good. That defensive front, I believe, is leading Conference USA in sacks this season. They got 30 of them on the season. So it's a test for this front, but it's also one of those tests where if they don't pass it, I think you're more worried than you were before.
Yeah. I guess how do you see this one shaking out? Because I do think Jacksonville State probably gets a couple of big plays that ends up keeping it kind of tight early. But like you said, I think South Carolina can simply outlast them. I think South Carolina should be able to run the ball in this game. Mario Anderson should have a nice game if he continues to play like he has over the last month. And yeah, this could be a nice get right game, I guess, of your offensive line as you're trying to figure out who's healthy and who is going to be starting down the stretch of these last 4 games?
Yeah, I guess my question here, and I'll get to a prediction in a second. I think my question would be the obvious caveat being no injuries, which I think would be the worst case at all coming out of this game. What do you want to see? What would make you feel better? What would be your palate cleanser? What do you need to see beyond a scoreboard from this game?
Running the ball effectively,
Okay.
getting some other wide receivers involved. Nick Carver seemed like he was right on the precipice of his coming out game. Still haven't gotten him a touchdown since that Furman game. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So it'd be nice to, sort of let him fully have a coming out party against what we think is probably an inferior opponent. And then defensively, you're okay with giving up a few big plays here and there, but consistency on getting off the field on 3rd and 4th down, which is something that they have struggled with in every loss that they've had all year this season. I think you can probably, still get away with giving up some points to Jacksonville State, but you won't feel too good about the rest of the games on the stretch if this one ends up, 31-24 or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I think my thing is, I think you hit the nail on the head. You need to see defense. You need to see people, we'll see. We've talked about, okay, they've got pieces. They played well in spurts. They played well coming out of half at Mizzou. They started the game hot at A&M. 4 quarters, even like 3 quarters of really solid defense, as long as the bottom doesn't totally fall out that other quarter. I think that you used the word consistent. I think that's right. Just doing the right things, doing the things you're supposed to do. I think cleaner football is my other one too. We talked about some of the kind of the miscues and mistakes, the kick catch interference penalty, the 12 men on the field last week. Some of that just kind of simple stuff that you don't want to see your team doing by week 9. I think if you can cut some of that stuff out this week against Jacksonville State, you probably feel better about things.
Yeah, along that same note, cleaning up the drops. We talked about some of the crucial drops that happened last week. And yeah, I mean, ideally, you'd like to get enough of a lead in the 4th quarter that you see a little bit of that freshman movement. Lenore Sellers, Tyshawn Russell, maybe even some Elijah Davis, whatever. But
Jatavius Shivers up front.
Yeah, just starting to see what you got in some of those guys as we go down the stretch and start to move on and turn the page on the 2023 season. That's not necessarily a requirement, though. Whatever. If you win comfortably by 2 or 3 scores, I think you still feel pretty all right. Do you have a specific score prediction on how you think it's going to go?
I haven't made one yet. I do think there's a very similar Furman type feel to this game, which I believe that was 47-21. I don't know if you're going to score into the 40s again, because I think you're just trying to work on things on offense as much as you are just going out and dominating. I'll say like South Carolina 35, Jacksonville State 17.
That sounds about right to me as well. I was looking back at the Furman box score because I remember there being some hand wringing on our forums, and that's because that one was tied 7-7 at the end of the 1st quarter. It wouldn't
I can see that
shock me.
happening.
Yeah, I would say it wouldn't shock me if it's something like that again. A little bit of a slow start on both sides of the ball. Maybe Jacksonville State hits a big play or a trick play or something like that and makes it interesting. But ultimately, I think you simply outlast them down the stretch. You mentioned that as you were heading into media yesterday, you were able to hear the practice field a little bit, and they seem to be putting an emphasis on 4th quarter.
Yeah, I heard the word 4th quarter a few times. Words.
And I tend to think that that's the storyline of this one is you're just simply more talented, have a little bit more depth than this G5 school you're playing. And I do think down the stretch in the late 3rd and 4th quarter, you pull away. So yeah, 35-20, just to give a different score. But I think you're probably spot on.
Now that's not a cover though. That's 15.5 is your number right now.
Well, that's it's possible.
They will not be in your parlay this week.
They will not be in my parlay this week. I stopped betting on South Carolina.
Nah,
early on in the season, so they kept screwing me up.
That's about all I had on Jack State.
Yeah. So on Saturday, it'll be me and intern Peyton in the live thread on GamecockScoop.com. Come hang out, talk some ball. Alan is going to Paris, and that game is on Monday.
Monday. I've got some fun stuff for y'all coming too. Some features, some people I've already talked to about it. Just keep your eyes peeled on the site over the weekend and going into that Vanderbilt week. There's some good stuff coming.
Yeah, so South Carolina playing Notre Dame, the women's team in Paris. For those of you that didn't know, on Monday we will have all the coverage for that. Men's basketball starts next week, or they start tonight.
Exhibition tonight against Wofford, and then the first game that counts is also Monday against USC Upstate. And I will be in Charlotte next Friday for their first Power 5 game, their first kind of big game against Virginia Tech. Little Beamer Bowl on the hardwood.
Yeah, so for those of you that are starting to check out on the 2023 football season, 2023 basketball season is getting ready to go. If you go back in our YouTube channel or our Spotify feed or wherever you're listening, you can see our basketball preview. It's in the title. I believe it was 2 episodes ago, but go back and check that out. We will be back here after the Jacksonville State game to talk a little bit more about that. I don't know if it'll be both of us or what. We'll have to figure out time zones and whether or not you're eating a croissant or what's going on over there. But we will have some content for you following the Jacksonville State game. And until next time, this has been the GamecockScoop.com podcast. We'll see you.